Zelda, Ark, Pokemon, and Elden Ring. Zelda, Ark, Pokemon, and Elden Ring. Anytime I watch a video or read an article on PalWorld, it always seems to come back to either Zelda or Ark, Pokemon, or Elden Ring. It's not unwarranted necessarily. The game does take multiple aspects from these games, and it doesn't really hide the fact that it's sort of a conglomerate of these and their features. But I think PalWorld is a little bit more of a full experience than people are giving them credit. PalWorld is almost like a dream. It's like one of those videos you've seen where they mod Breath of the Wild with Pokemon and they claim that that would be like the best Pokemon game ever if they combined the two. That it would move the franchise into the next generation and everyone would love it. PalWorld, for a lot of people who grew up with the games and are now a bit older, not necessarily disliking Pokemon but wanting something a little more adult, I think this is exactly what you're looking for. Subscribe! The pals in this game, the creatures that you capture and fight with and build with and so on, are the game's, of course, greatest asset to you and also your greatest enemy. Their designs, besides the ones that seem not entirely original, are for the most part pretty good. There's a good variety in pals. Some are cute and cuddly, others are buff and threatening. They all have unique functions too, depending on their designs. I found out partway through the game that I could give my own pal a saddle and fly with them everywhere. It's basically what I've wanted to do with the fly mechanic in Pokemon my entire life. When exploring the world too, it didn't take too long for me to find new pals I hadn't seen before either. Despite having a relatively small amount of pals compared to other monster collecting games, they have about 100. Pokemon, I think, caps out at 400 in their new games. The way they were spread out amongst the world keeps the game pretty fresh. Some are found almost anywhere but are incredibly rare, and others only spawn in some high-level areas. Every pal also has a type, up to 4 traits, and different kinds of work they can do. The typing is literally just ripped from Pokemon, but slimmed down a bit. Like, did we really need to use like dark and normal types again? It feels like this is one of the few features that was almost entirely ripped from Pokemon. It wouldn't be that much of a great effort to have a dino type or a robot type of pal. It'd give the game a lot more diversity in its creature design too, since most of them seem to be pretty bound by their typing. Like every grass type probably has a leaf on it or is green. Every fire type is usually red and has fire on it at some point. It feels like they could go so much further than and they're holding themselves back intentionally. Like, I know they have the skills to go so much further considering their other designs as well. Originality aside, the pals have a lot more functions than just catching, fighting, and rotting in a box somewhere for the Pokedex entry. Where pals become truly useful, and where you find one of the main mechanics in the game, is actually the base building. Everything you build or make, from a crafting table to a pal box to armor or weapons, takes a certain amount of time. Nothing is instant, and while that would seem like a major annoyance, and I very much thought it would be when I started the game, the thing that kind of makes this mechanic work to me is that you have the pals to help you build. Every pal has a different job that they can do, or multiple even. Like, fire pals can light kindling or light torches to keep your ores smelting. Grass types can plant seeds, and water types can water the plants. Certain pals can even move objects or like mine ore for you. There's so many different types of work they can do. It allows you to strategize in a really interesting way. Maybe at one base, you could have all your pals be gardening for food. Another you can have be a mine. Or you can have even one base like I have, where every different pal has different multiple jobs, giving everyone sort of 1 or 2 special tasks to complete while I'm out exploring. And exploration in this game is interesting. A lot of it is bare, and that's kind of the point, so that more pals have more room to spawn and breathe and do their routines. Most of the world is in ruin, like there are abandoned churches and structures, not very much unlike Zelda. There are small bases housing different factions like the Free Pal Alliance or the Rain Syndicate that will attack you on sight, either with guns or bows. Beating one of these is not as hard as you would expect, but the chance of saving or potentially earning a rare pal does make it worth the couple minutes of combat. Most of the game's world's value also comes from the pals, which does kind of take away from the game since they're one of the only things worth looking for throughout the world. Every point of interest is either a dungeon with pals to fight, a base with people to fight, or a fast travel point. There's also a couple collectibles, but they're pretty simple. There's never a puzzle or anything to do it. You just grab it and you're pretty much done. I don't feel an incentive to go out and explore for any reason other than finding new pals or to fill out the map. If there were something more akin to shrines like in Zelda, or just something that has a bit more substance to the game, I think that would make the world building so much more interesting. Even give us like side quests or something of the sort. But where the game gets most interesting to me is how you can push the game, and it actually lets you. Let's say you want to try catching one of the humans in one of the camps, the syndicate members. It doesn't make it clear that you can do that. When you aim at them, no capture rate shows up for a person. But if you think one day, like, hey, wouldn't that be fucked up? You probably can. You can capture them. Take the labor of the game. You can straight up stop feeding your pals and the game will let you. They will starve and they'll work less or even just stop entirely, but it's an option. Ever thought about, like, in Pokemon where the meat comes from, how messed up that Pokemon kind of indirectly hinted that tanks were used for beef? PalWorld almost embraces that idea, and they let you make food from your own pals. It embraces the darker aspects and uses them to make the game more interesting. If I did actually have to compare it to something, I would honestly compare it more to RimWorld. RimWorld lets you do all of these things. Butcher your colonists, capture humans. It's honestly kind of surprising how much these similarities in these games line up, because I really don't think that that's what they were going for when they were making PalWorld. The main difference between that and RimWorld, though, is that none of that violent stuff is really necessary. It's definitely a survival game, sure, but getting food or making beds is not nearly as much of a challenge like it is in RimWorld. You can play PalWorld like I do right now. I like my pals to be fed, I like them to be entertained, so while I go out and I capture some more, I perfect my cozy base in one of the corners of the islands and I let them live their life happily. It appeals to my want for a relaxing, low-stakes experience like Stardew, but also my love for efficiency in games like Satisfactory. I think PalWorld has a lot of potential. It's got a very solid foundation for the game, and I hope just the further updates make it even better. It is still in an early access state, so it's got quite a bit of bugs. Graphically, it's a little off as well, but I know that there are plenty of more features they're working on, and they've made it clear that a lot of bugs are going to be worked on, and right now, I would say it's a pretty decent game. I've enjoyed my time so far, and I really don't see my enjoyment lessening, especially considering how much I know I haven't encountered yet. If you want to try PalWorld, I would highly recommend it playing through Game Pass first, though. Like I say with any game that is on Game Pass. Both systems that PalWorld is on, which is Xbox and PC, also have Game Pass support in those consoles. And paying $15 to try out the game to know if you like it, or even if it runs on your computer, I think is a worthy trade in case it ends up not being worth your time.